What's going on, guys? Aaron here. Today I've got the brand new GoPro Hero 9 and I'm going to be comparing it to the DJI Osmo Action that I've been completely satisfied with over the last year. I even made up this little rig to keep them side by side. Even though I'm sure you've already seen one, I'll start off with a real quick unboxing, move on to some side-by-sides, do some dimensional comparisons, take a look at how they hyperlapse, get into their image stabilization capabilities under a few different lighting scenarios, test their in-camera microphones with wind present, take a glance at their time-lapse outputs, do some high frame rate comparisons, and then finally look real quick at their low light stills capability. If you'd like to skip ahead to any of the previously mentioned topics, they should be right here with some timestamps. So let's get going. For this year's release, GoPro is doing away with the plastic dome style packaging material they've been using for as long as I can remember. Instead, going with a cardboard sleeve over a semi-hard carrying case. It's a nice upgrade. Inside, we've got the familiar USB-C cable, battery, mounting bracket with 3M VHB adhesive pre-applied, mounting clip, thumb screw, and of course the Hero 9 itself. I'm a little disappointed that GoPro didn't take the extra time to go ahead and fully mold the case. Instead, everything is held in place by a cardboard insert. We've also got a quick start guide and a little safety manual in 19 languages. The camera should look familiar to anyone who's spent any time around GoPros the last few years. Of course, the big change this year is the arrival of the front-facing selfie screen that DJI pioneered last year. There is only one door on this year's model. Open it and we'll find the battery, USB-C port, and the microSD card slot. Initially, I was skeptical of this arrangement when it came to things like charging while recording, during a long time lapse, for example. However, I did confirm the camera is fully functional without the battery and will operate on USB power alone. The other big physical change this year is the size. The GoPro Hero 9 is the biggest yet, and this growth spurt becomes apparent when placing the Osmo Action right next to it. That said, the GoPro has built-in mounting tabs and thus doesn't need a frame. Throw that variable into the equation and the size difference gets into negligible territory. Speaking of those tabs, I've got mixed feelings on them. On one hand, they are super convenient. Not having to look around for the other half of your camera is a big usability plus. However, they do feel a bit flimsy and don't really match the rest of the unit's robust build quality. I get the impression that if not careful, they could snap off. Luckily though, replacements should be available. Here is a set for the Hero 8, so I assume they'll either work on the 9 or that models will come along shortly. I'll place a link to these in the cameras we're talking about below. They are Amazon affiliate links for which the channel will earn a small commission. Use is greatly appreciated. Moving on to the all-important image quality, and I'll start us off with a little hyperlapse action. Or, I guess I should say time warp, since this is a GoPro video, and that's their term for it. Image quality is very good on both cameras, but I'm going to give the edge to the Hero 9. It's got that all too familiar GoPro color grading going on with a slight oversaturation. But more importantly, dynamic range and detail are better. Next up, I want to take a look at these two cameras' image stabilization. GoPro is going with Hypersmooth 3.0 while the Osmo Action ships with Rocksteady. I'm going to start on a forest trail with relatively poor lighting. I specifically chose this location because in my experience, DJI's Rocksteady doesn't do so well in lower light levels. I was curious if the GoPro was plagued by the same problems. Okay, so I think it's obvious who's winning here. Although neither camera's IS is working beautifully, the Hero 9 is doing the better job. Furthermore, the footage from the GoPro is much sharper. I don't worry so much about color, as that can be adjusted to taste in post. Making my way down to the beach, and the lighting situation has improved quite a bit. So much that I don't think available light, or lack thereof, can be used as an excuse for performance anxiety. I also want to point out that I'm not making any effort to hold the cameras steady here. I'm just letting them bounce around. In other words, shake is likely exaggerated for testing purposes. Once again, we've got a clear winner. The Hero 9 offers much better detail, marginally better stabilization, and has noticeably better dynamic range. Thus far, the GoPro seems to be thoroughly destroying the Osmo Action. Next up, I want to give you guys a little audio comparison. Here, I specifically waited until the wind picked up, as I wanted to simultaneously test how well each camera dealt with that too. What's going on, guys? Today we're out on a beautiful Seattle afternoon. The rain has set in, and you are listening to audio from the GoPro Hero 9 internal microphone. You are now listening to audio from the Osmo Action internal microphone. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, GoPro Hero 9. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, DJI Osmo Action. And I think we finally got a win for the Osmo Action. Real quick disclaimer though, I did normalize the audio levels between these two cameras in post. I had to pull up the volume in the DJI by about 9 decibels to match the output of the GoPro. That said, I feel both did a good job capturing my voice, but the Osmo did a better job filtering out the wind. For our next test, we're back at the waterline again, looking at image stabilization and video quality. But this time, I've got the Hero's Hypersmooth boost turned on. In this mode, we get even more EIS at the cost of a narrower field of view. And once again, the Hero 9 is the clear winner. It's putting most gimbals to shame, and the DJI just can't keep up. I also want to remind everyone what I said earlier, that I'm making no real effort to hold these cameras particularly still. I personally feel the GoPro's performance at 4K 60 with IS boost on is spectacular. Before moving on, I want to give you guys a little bonus footage. The Hero 9 Black versus a 2018 Hero running 5 Black firmware. The only reason I'm doing this is to demonstrate just how far electronic image stabilization has come over the last few years. Also, I made a little technical error when recording and left the Hero 9 set at 5K 30. This matters because when recording like this, Hypersmooth isn't able to be set to high, meaning that if I were recording at 4K or 1080 like I was supposed to, IS would look even better on the Hero 9. But I think the results, even slightly nerfed, speak for themselves. Now let's speed things up. Here, we've got a side-by-side time-lapse comparison. I set each camera to take a picture every half a second and output the results to 1080p. I think we're in near as makes no difference territory. Both cameras show decent detail while maintaining surprisingly good dynamic range. Going the other direction, and we'll now look at each camera's high frame rate capabilities, starting with 120 FPS slowed down 5 times. First, the GoPro. We can see that we're starting to give up some detail, but overall the results are quite good. And it's the same story here, although I'd give a very slight edge to the Osmo in terms of sharpness. Putting them side by side reveals very little difference in overall image quality. The GoPro offers more saturation, but a little tweaking in Premiere and even that goes away. I think the reality is that most people would have a hard time telling the two apart under these shooting conditions. Now let's slow things down even further. I'm recording at 240 FPS, meaning we can slow things down 10 times. And I'd give this one to the Osmo. The Hero 9 has gotten really mushy. With the screen paused, take a look here in the trees. The image from the GoPro almost looks like a cartoon, while the DJI still looks respectable. Before wrapping up, I want to give you guys some extremely low light comparisons. For that, let's take a walk in my backyard at night. Well, it's tough to pick a winner because they're both quite bad. I think the moral of the story here is that both of these cameras are better thought of as daytime tools. From a stills perspective, they don't fare much better. Both photos were shot in RAW and then processed to taste in Lightroom. We've got minimal detail and a lot of noise. Just for some perspective, here's that same scene shot with my Lumix G85. So again, when the lights go down, the action cams should probably be put away. Now let's tally everything up. I feel that action cams can be judged via a few broad categories, and in order of descending importance, we've got image quality, image stabilization, build quality, and ease of use. When looking at image quality, the Hero 9 is the clear winner. Except for very high frame rate recording, this year's offering from GoPro produced footage that just looked better. It reliably had better dynamic range and sharpness. That's the two things that you really can't correct in post. In the field of image stabilization, Hypersmooth 3.0 is clearly better than rock solid under everyday shooting and absolutely obliterates it with the boost turned on. There's no contest here. This category's a win for the GoPro. Looking at build quality, and I'm going to give a very slight edge to the Osmo Action. This call is very subjective, but the GoPro, while feeling robust, doesn't quite have that bulletproof feel that the DJI does. Ease of use is a tie for a couple reasons. I really like the ability to mount the GoPro without a case. That scores major points. However, I still feel like the menu system is both more intuitive and responsive on the Osmo Action. A simple swipe up allows one to change the resolution and frame rate to whatever one wants. On the Hero 9, this is a multi-step endeavor. I also like the front-facing screens implementation on the Osmo Action better. It responds to voice commands, so saying screen switch does just that. Screen switch. Screen switch. Screen switch. Screen switch. The GoPro's front screen is an always on or always off affair. To me, that just seems like a poor design decision. Overall, I think the Hero 9 is the better camera, no question. But is it worth a roughly 50% premium over the Osmo Action? Well, that depends on your use case. If you primarily use your action cam for things like wide-angle B-roll or time lapses, then probably not. If you use your action cam for point-of-view action type stuff, then it absolutely is. Furthermore, the GoPro does one thing the Osmo Action just can't: 5K. While most people don't encode 5K after editing, it can be helpful when outputting 4K and one wants a little room for post-production cropping and zooming without losing any quality. And that will about do her for today. If you found any of this useful, a like, sub, or share would be appreciated. All right, take care.